Nicaragua's tyrant hunts his enemies across borders. Dissidents fleeing Ortega face murder, death threats, and relentless surveillance, even in Costa Rica. Families flee again, racing to Europe and beyond as assassins and spies stalk their every move. The dictator's shadow stretches worldwide, leaving exiles terrified, hunted, and wondering, is anywhere on earth safe from Ortega's wrath? Nicaraguan dissidents who fled President Daniel Ortega's authoritarian regime are discovering that exile offers no sanctuary. Even in Costa Rica, a nation historically celebrated for its stability and low crime rates, opposition figures are being hunted, murdered, and forced to flee once more. According to Reuters, in late June, journalist Henry Briceno and his family found themselves packing their bags in Costa Rica, barely 7 months after Nicaraguan police had expelled them from their homeland at gunpoint. The 75-year-old opposition figure had hoped Costa Rica would provide the safety his family desperately needed. Instead, he found himself living in fear, watching unknown men on motorcycles and unmarked cars trailing his movements through the streets of San Jose. His fears were not unfounded. On June 19th, prominent Nicaraguan opposition activist Roberto Samcam was shot dead in the doorway of his house in Costa Rica's capital. It was the third killing of a Nicaraguan political exile in Costa Rica since 2023, and the fourth murder of a Nicaraguan dissident in Central America overall since 2022. Samcam had warned authorities he was being followed in the days before his death. The head of Costa Rican intelligence agency, Wilberth Villegas, acknowledged this warning during a session with congressmen in early October. The pattern was chillingly familiar to Briceno, who was experiencing the same surveillance. On June 30th, less than 2 weeks after his friend's murder, Briceno made the agonizing decision to uproot his family once again. Despite being granted political asylum in Costa Rica, they flew to another continent, refusing to identify their destination for fear of further persecution.
In Costa Rica, the current administration has unfortunately been very indifferent to its great responsibility toward exiles, particularly Nicaraguan exiles, where the criminal tentacle of the Ortega Murillo dictatorship has crossed the border and brought the bloodshed into Costa Rica. Thus, no Nicaraguan who is in circumstances of banishment or exile can feel even minimally safe.
Briceno's family is far from alone in their flight from what was supposed to be a safe haven. According to Reuters interviews with 19 Nicaraguan dissidents, at least 50 Nicaraguan families have fled Costa Rica over the past year, seeking refuge primarily in Europe and North America. 24 more Nicaraguan exiles and their families are actively planning their departure. The scale of this secondary exodus has not been previously reported and reveals the expanding reach of the Ortega government's crackdown. Between 2018 and 2024, more than 200,000 Nicaraguans sought asylum in Costa Rica, with another 15,000 granted refugee status, making it the country with the largest Nicaraguan diaspora. Now that sanctuary is crumbling, a dozen exiles told Reuters they received identical threatening messages by text and phone calls, warning them to stop criticizing the government on social media or face consequences. The threats were specific, personal, and terrifying in their uniformity. Human rights activist Alvaro Leiva's experience illustrates the persistent nature of the surveillance. After fleeing Nicaragua's 2018 crackdown on anti-government protesters, Leiva settled in Costa Rica. Within a year, he began receiving death threats from men with Nicaraguan accents. Strange cars and motorcycles stalked him at home and work. Fellow exiles reported seeing some of these motorcycles departing from the Nicaraguan embassy in San Jose. Over 5 years, Leiva sent nearly a dozen letters to Costa Rican political leaders and security officials, detailing the threats he faced. In his final letter in November 2024, addressed to Costa Rican President Rodrigo Chavez, Leiva renounced his political asylum, citing the lack of safety. Alvaro then fled the country, refusing to disclose his new location.
teníamos información, ¿verdad? Desde la sede diplomática.
They were operating, we had information from the Nicaraguan embassy in Costa Rica. This indicates to us that today, even now, all the diplomatic missions of the Ortega Murillo dictatorship's government are operational centers whose sole purpose, more than diplomacy, is to carry out monitoring of this kind, as happened in my particular case.
Beyond the murders of Samcam and 2 other Nicaraguan exiles in Costa Rica, Eric Castillo and Jaime Ortega, killed in 2023 and 2024, the violence has taken multiple forms. Rodolfo Rojas was kidnapped and murdered in Honduras in 2022. 3 more Nicaraguans living in Costa Rica told Reuters they survived being shot at by men on motorcycles who had trailed them for days. Another exiled Nicaraguan said he was nearly beaten to death in San Jose. 4 suspects, all Costa Ricans, are currently in custody charged with Samcam's killing. However, the head of Costa Rica's judicial investigation body, Randall Zuniga, stated on September 12 that the crime's mastermind remains at large. Authorities are investigating whether the killings represent political incursion by another government. The United Nations group of human rights experts on Nicaragua issued a report last month stating that the possibility of Managua orchestrating the killings cannot be excluded until comprehensive and independent inquiries are completed. The report noted that Managua surveils exiled opposition figures to silence dissenting voices wherever they are found. Human rights groups say President Ortega has grown increasingly authoritarian since massive anti-government protests erupted in 2018. He has consolidated presidential control and systematically silenced critics through violence, imprisonment, and forced exile. The Nicaraguan government's response to these allegations has been silence. Co-President Rosario Murillo, who is Ortega's wife and serves as spokesperson for the presidency, did not respond to questions about the killings or surveillance of exiles. The Nicaraguan embassy in San Jose similarly remained silent. Costa Rican Public Security Minister Mario Zamora, while speaking to Reuters, said,
"Nicaraguan exiles facing risks to their life could ask the courts for additional security."
However, none of the exiles Reuters spoke to had requested such protection. For those fleeing Costa Rica, options are severely limited. The United States under President Donald Trump has tightened asylum pathways and stripped thousands of Nicaraguans living in America of protection from deportation. Other Central American nations struggle with their own security crises. Spain has emerged as the preferred destination for many, offering shared language, a relatively accessible asylum process, and crucially, distance from Nicaragua. Yet, even those who have made it to Europe remain fearful of revealing their locations. The situation reflects what activists describe as a campaign by the Ortega government to extend its repression beyond Nicaragua's borders, creating a climate of fear that follows dissidents wherever they flee. As one in exile put it, the tyrant's capacity for repression knows no boundaries, neither geographical nor moral.
Opposition members residing in Costa Rica also feel vulnerable in the face of the international persecution that the dictatorship has waged against those of us who continue to raise our voices for the Nicaraguan people and against the repression they face.
For Nicaragua's opposition figures in exile, the question now is no longer where to flee, but whether anywhere is truly safe from Ortega's reach.